Hi, I'm Daniel, founder at Deep3 Labs. Lately, I've been making a lot of videos about our recently released crypto trading app, Hoku. This video is going to be different. In fact, I'm going to share what I believe is probably a pretty controversial and unpopular opinion in the crypto and AI industry. There's been a lot of news asking a simple question. Is there a bubble in the AI industry? Now, I'm not going to try to answer that question. There's way smarter people out there to do that. But in the crypto and AI industry, I think the answer is absolutely yes. And it comes down to how most of these companies are building products. Most of them are doing something called fine-tuning an LLM. What that means is they're taking data from their specific domain or their problem area, and they're using that data to teach the large language model to respond differently in those circumstances. Now, what's important to note about that is they're not actually creating new intelligence there. The underlying model still has the same architecture. The other thing that's important to note is they're placing a really big bet, and I'd argue it's a silly bet when you look at the recent data. That bet is that the model that they're building on, the underlying frontier model, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, they're betting that that model isn't going to one day just be able to do that same thing and do it better. And the reason I think that's a pretty silly bet is when you look out there in the actual results, you see that these models are improving at an absolutely ridiculous rate, highly exponential. In fact, every 7 months, the capabilities of these models are doubling. The other thing that's been making the news is something called artificial general intelligence. Why that matters here is every single one of these LLM builders, they're all focused on the same goal, general intelligence. That means building a single model, or at least a single model system, that's capable of doing all kinds of different tasks. If we map that back to this original topic, that means that if you're a crypto AI company who's fine-tuned an LLM to optimize a crypto portfolio, and every one of these larger LLM companies is seeking to generalize their intelligence, it's very likely that one day there's going to be a model that gets released that does this and does this even better. And this isn't really just a hypothetical. Claude 4.5 just dropped. And if you look through the docs, there's this seemingly innocuous little statement here saying that there's enhanced computer use capabilities. They can now zoom in on one part of your screen and you can prompt the AI to do things based on that. Well, there's a YC-backed startup called Cluso, and that's generally what they do. So they've built model capability on top of a large language model. I don't know them well enough to know which one. And those capabilities are now at least partially threatened by the newest release of Claude. That kind of thing is going to happen over and over again, and over time, it's going to wipe out more and more crypto AI companies. That's why the work that we do at Deep3 Labs is so important. We're developing machine learning capabilities off the data inside the blockchain. We're not just using language models. And in fact, one day we hope to create frontier models that are based off of the data inside the blockchain. But even now, what it means for us is moat. There is no possibility that an LLM, because it learns from words, will one day be able to do the exact same thing a machine learning model that we build on blockchain data can do, because the data are fundamentally different. And that's what's so important to note about Deep3, and also important to note about most crypto AI companies out there. Whenever I get the chance, ask founders of companies like this that same question. What are you going to do when the underlying model that you build on can do the same thing that your company has built a feature on, and perhaps do it even better? Most of them will respond the same way. Well, we'll just fine tune again. Okay, fine. Maybe you can do that. Well, what about profit? If your model and this fundamental frontier model are generally performing the same capabilities, why would somebody want to accept your profit margin? It will always be cheaper to get the same problem solved by the underlying frontier model. So I think there's a bunch of different challenges that are ahead for a lot of crypto AI companies out there. And I think it's important for every user and every investor to know about this.